No one welcomed her but her mother and sisters, who, with tears in their eyes and with glad faces, welcomed her and talked with her very pleasingly. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The mother and sisters of Sati could not follow the others, who did not receive Sati very well. Due to natural affection, they immediately embraced her with tears in their eyes and with loving feelings. This shows that women, as a class, are very soft hearted. Their natural affection and love cannot be checked by artificial means. Although the men present were very learned brahmanas and demigods, they were afraid of their superior, Daksha, and because they knew that their welcoming Sati would displease him, although in their minds they wanted to receive her, they could not do so. Women are naturally soft hearted, but men are sometimes very hard hearted. Text number 8. Although she was received by her sisters and mother, she did not reply to their words of reception. And although she was offered a seat and presents, she did not accept anything. For her father neither talked with her, for her father neither talked with her nor welcomed her by asking about her welfare. Well, that's pretty, let's say, calloused. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Sati did not accept the greetings offered by her sisters and mother, for she was not at all satisfied by her father's silence. Sati was the youngest child of Daksha, and she knew that she was his pet. But now, because of her association with Lord Shiva, Daksha forgot all his affection for his daughter. And this very much aggrieved her. The material bodily conception is so polluted that even upon slight provocation, all our relationships of love and affection are nullified. Bodily relationships are so transient that even though one is affectionate towards someone in a bodily relationship, a slight provocation terminates this intimacy. Mm-hmm. That's so true. I remember my mother had a half brother, meaning, and they were related. And one time she said something out of joking with her brother, and that was it. He never talked to her again. He's a crazy guy, and let's say you have to be careful what you say, what you do with people. Canto 4, Chapter 4, text number 9. Present in the arena of sacrifice, Sati saw that there were no oblations for her husband, Lord Shiva. Next, she had her father failed to invite Lord Shiva, but when he saw Lord Shiva's exalted wife, Daksha did not receive her either. Thus, she became greatly angry, so much so that she looked at her father as if she was going to burn him with her eyes. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. By offering oblations in the fire while chanting the Vedic mantras The Vedic mantra Swaha. One offers respect to all the demigods, great sages, and pitas, including Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and Lord Vishnu. It is customary that Shiva is one of those who are offered respects, but Sati, while personally present in the arena, saw that the Brahmanas did not utter the mantra offering oblations to Lord Shiva. Nama Shivaya Swaha. She was not sorry for herself, for she was ready to come to her father's house without being invited. But she wanted to see whether or not her husband was being respected. To see her relatives, her sisters and mother, was not so important. Even when she was received by her mother and sisters, she did not care, for she was most concerned that her husband being insulted in the sacrifice. When she marked the insult, she became greatly angry, and she looked at her father so angrily that Daksha appeared to burn in her vision. Whoa, that's very, very, let's say, very, very,
intense.
yeah, very intense. Text 10. Followers of Lord Shiva, the ghosts who were ready to injure or kill Daksha, but Sati stopped them by her order. She's a powerful lady. She was very angry and sorrowful. And in that mood, she began to condemn the process of sacrificial, fruitive activities. Oh, well, that's good. That's not bad. And persons who were very proud of such unnecessary and troublesome sacrifices. Yeah, it's much better just to chant Hare Krishna than to do all those so-called sacrifices. She especially condemned her father, speaking against him in the presence of all. Well, that's pretty big time statement. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The process of offering sacrifices is especially meant to satisfy Vishnu, who is called Yagnesha, because he is the enjoyer of the fruits of all sacrifice. Bhagavad Gita 5:29 also confirms this fact. The Lord says, Bhaktaram yagitapasam sarvalokamaheswaram sridam sarvabhutanam yadva mam santamrichati. He is the actual beneficiary of all sacrifices. Not knowing this fact, less intelligent men offer sacrifices for some material benefit. To derive personal material benefits for sense gratification is the reason persons like Daksha and his followers perform sacrifices. All right, well, they do it just for material benefits, not for any spiritual benefit. Such sacrifices are condemned here as labor of love without actual profit. This is confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, so this labor of love in this context is not a positive thing. It's a negative thing.
Mm-hmm.
One may prosecute the Vedic injunctions of offering sacrifices and other fruitive activities. But, and a big but here, if by such activities one does not develop attraction for Vishnu, they are useless labors. One who has developed love for Vishnu must develop love and respect for Vishnu's devotees. Oh, that makes sense. Lord Shiva is considered the foremost personality amongst the Vaishnavas. Vaishnavanam Yata Sambhu. Oh, it's good to read this today.
Yeah.
Today is
Maharaj.
Shivaratri.
I was also thinking, what
Yeah.
a coincidence.
Yeah. Thus, when Sati saw that her father was performing great sacrifices, but had no respect for the greatest devotee, Lord Shiva, she was very angry. This is fitting when Vishnu or a Vaishnava is insulted. One should be angry. Wow, there it is. Lord Chaitanya, who always preached nonviolence, meekness, and humility, also became angry when Nityananda was offended by Jagai and Madai. And he wanted to kill them. When Vishnu or a Vaishnava is blasphemed or dishonored, one should be very angry. Narottam Dasa Thakur said, Krodha Bhakta Dvesi Jane. We have anger, and an anger can be a great quality when directed against a person who is envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his devotee. One should not be tolerant when a person is offensive towards Vishnu or a Vaishnava. The anger of Sati towards her father was not objectionable. For although he was her father, he was trying to insult the greatest Vaishnava. Thus, Sati's anger against her father was quite applaudable. Okay, so today is Shivaratri.
Yes.
So reading all this is very interesting and very
Coincidence.
yeah. Text 11. Let's see. Wait a minute.
Yes. 4, 4, 11.
Huh?
4, 4, and 11.
4, 4, 12.
11, 11.
11, yeah. The blessed goddess said, Lord Shiva is the most beloved of all living entities. He has no rival. No one is very dear to him, and no one is his enemy. No one but you could be envious of such a universal being who is free from all enmity. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In Bhagavad Gita 9:29, the Lord says, Samaham Sarvabhutesu. I am equal to all living entities. Similarly, Lord Shiva is a qualitative incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he has almost the same qualities as the Supreme Lord. Therefore, he is equal to everyone. No one is his enemy, and no one is his friend. But one who is envious by nature can become the enemy of Lord Shiva. Therefore, Sati accused her father. No one but you could be envious of Lord Shiva or be his enemy. Whoa. Other sages, one second. Other sages and learned brahmanas were present, but they were not envious of Lord Shiva, although they were all dependent on Daksha. Therefore, no one but Daksha could be envious of Lord Shiva. That was the accusation of Sati. Whoa. Text number 12. Twice born Daksha, a man like you, twice born Daksha, a man like you can simply find fault in the qualities of others. Well, twice born means he's a Brahmana.
Mhm.
Lord Shiva, however, not only finds no faults with others' qualities, but if someone has a little good quality, he magnifies it greatly. Unfortunately, you have found fault with such a great soul. Purport by His Divine Grace is Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. King Daksha is addressed here by his daughter Sati as Dvija, twice born. Twice born refers to the higher classes of men, namely the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas. In other words, a Dvija is not an ordinary man, but one who has studied the Vedic literature from a spiritual master and can discriminate between good and bad. Therefore, it is supposed that he understands logic and philosophy. Oh, that's nice.
Mhm.
Sati, Daksha's daughter, put before him sound arguments. There are some highly qualified persons who accept only the good qualities of others. Just as a bee is always interested in the honey in the flower and does not consider the thorns and colors. Highly qualified persons who are uncommon accept only the good qualities of others, not considering their bad qualities. Whereas the common man can judge what are good qualities and what are bad qualities. Among the uncommonly good souls, I like that word, uncommonly good souls, there are still gradations. And the best good soul is one who accepts an insignificant asset of a person and magnifies that good quality. All right. Lord Shiva is also called Asutosha, which refers to one who is satisfied very easily and who offers to any person the highest level of benediction. Wow. Okay. For example, once a devotee of Lord Shiva wanted the benediction that whenever he touched someone on the head, that person's head would at once be separated from his trunk. Lord Shiva agreed, although the benediction asked was not very commendable because the devotee wanted to kill his enemy, Lord Shiva. Oh, I'm sorry, his enemy. Lord Shiva considered the devotee's good quality in worshiping and satisfying him and granted the benediction. Thus, Lord Shiva accepted his bad qualities as magnificently good qualities. Wow.
Mhm.
But Sati accused her father, you are just the opposite. Although Lord Shiva has so many good qualities and no bad qualities at all, you have accepted him as bad and found fault with him. Oh, well, that's really bad. Because of your accepting his good qualities to be bad, instead of your becoming the most exalted soul, you have become the most fallen. A man becomes the greatest soul by accepting the goodness of others' qualities, but by unnecessarily considering others' good qualities to be bad, you have become the lowest of the fallen souls. All right, that's a big, big statement. Text 13. It is not wonderful for persons who have accepted the transient material body as the self, engage always in deriding great souls. Oh, that's a horrible thing. Such envy on the part of the materialistic persons is very good because that is the way they fall down. Well, I've seen that. They are dismissed by the dust of the feet of great personalities.
Diminish.
I'm sorry. They are diminished by the dust of the feet of great personalities. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Everything depends on the strength of the recipient. For example, due to the scorching sunshine, many vegetables and flowers dry up, and many grow luxuriously. Thus, it is the recipient that causes growth and dwindling. Similarly, Mahiyasam Padpada Rajo Bishikam, the dust of the lotus feet of great personalities offers all good to the recipient, but the same dust can also do harm. Those who are offenders at the lotus feet of a great personality dry up their godly qualities and their godly qualities diminish. A great soul may forgive offenses, but Krishna does not excuse offenses to the dust of that great soul's feet. Just as one can tolerate the scorching sunshine on one's head, but cannot tolerate the scorching sunshine on one's feet. Wow. That's an interesting statement. An offender glides down more and more, therefore. An offender glides down more and more, therefore he naturally continues to commit offenses at the feet of the great soul. Offenses are generally committed by a person who falsely identify with the impermanent body. King Daksha was deeply engrossed in a misconception because he identified the body with the soul. There it is. He offended the lotus feet of Lord Shiva because he thought that his body, being the father of the body of Sati, was superior to Lord Shiva. Generally, less intelligent men misidentify in that way, and they act in the bodily concept of life. Thus, they are subject to commit more and more offenses at the lotus feet of great souls. One who has such a concept of life is considered to be in the class of animals like cows and asses. Wow. Okay. Well, basically, it's all about envy. One becomes unnecessarily envious because they're jealous and they can't control their mind and senses. Text 14. Sati continued, my dear father, you are committing the greatest offense by envying Lord Shiva, whose very name, consisting of two syllables, si and va, purifies one of all sinful activities. Wow, si va. His order is never neglected. Lord Shiva is always pure, and no one but you envies him. Okay, very good. Sati is like a powerful lady. She doesn't mince her words. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Since Lord Shiva is the greatest soul among the living entities within this material world, well, yeah, in the material world, he is the greatest amongst all living entities. In the spiritual world, Lord Shiva, Lord Krishna is the greatest. His name is Shiva, is very auspicious for persons who identify the body with the soul. Let me read that. Since Lord Shiva is the greatest soul among the living entities within this material world, his name, Shiva, is very auspicious for persons who identify the body with the soul. Well, that's not very auspicious. If such persons take shelter of Lord Shiva, gradually they will understand that they are not the material body, but are spirit soul. Shiva means Mangala, auspicious. Within the body, the soul is auspicious. Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. This realization is auspicious. As long as one does not realize his identity as the soul, whatever he does is inauspicious. Shiva means auspicious, and devotees of Lord Shiva gradually come to the platform of spiritual identification. Okay, main word there is gradually. But that is not all. Auspicious life begins from the point of spiritual identification. But there are still more duties. One has to understand one's relationship with the Supreme Soul, meaning Krishna. If one is actually a devotee of Lord Shiva, he comes to the platform of spiritual realization. But if he is not intelligent enough, then he stops at that point. Whoa. Only realizing that he is spirit soul. Aham Brahmasmi. If he is intelligent enough, however, he should continue to act in the way of Lord Shiva, for Lord Shiva is always absorbed in the thought of Vasudeva, meaning Krishna. As previously explained, Sattvam Vishuddham Vasudeva Sabditam. Lord Shiva is always in meditation on the lotus feet of Vasudeva, Sri Krishna. Here it is. Thus, the auspicious position of Lord Shiva is realized if one takes to the worship of Vishnu. Well, that should be a warning to us today. We should not have any negative feelings about Lord Shiva.
Mhm.
Because Lord Shiva says in the Shiva Purana that the topmost worship is worship of Lord Vishnu. Yeah, so how can you find any let's say reason to negate Lord Shiva? Lord Shiva is worship because he is the greatest devotee of Lord Vishnu. That's true. One should not, however, make the mistake of considering Lord Shiva and Lord Vishnu to be on the same level. It's also very important. That is also an atheist idea. It is also enjoined in the Vaishnaviya Purana that Vishnu or Narayana is the exalted supreme personality of Godhead, and no one should be compared to him as equal, even Lord Shiva or Lord Brahma. Oh, but on the other hand, Mayavadis, they do that.
Mm.
Not to speak of other demigods. And Mayavadis, they believe Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, they're all on the same level. And it's not true. Text 15. You are envious of Lord Shiva. Okay. Sati is socking it to him, not letting him go, not letting her father go. Who is the friend of all living entities within the three worlds? For the common man, he fulfills all desires, and because of their engagement in thinking of his lotus feet, he also blesses higher personalities who are seeking after Brahmananda, transcendental bliss. Oh, that's very nice. Yeah. And Prabhupada gave the name Brahmananda to one of his devotees. It means seeking transcendental bliss. Ordinarily, there are two classes of men. One class who are grossly materialistic, want material prosperity, and their desires are fulfilled if they worship Lord Shiva. Hare Krishna. Lord Shiva, being very quickly satisfied, satisfies the material desires of the common man very quickly. Therefore, it is seen that ordinary men are very much apt to worship him. Yeah, that's a fact. They want to get instant, what you would call instant benefits. Next, those who are disgusted or frustrated with the materialistic way of life worship Lord Shiva to attain salvation, which entails freedom from material identification. One who understands that he is not the material body, but a spirit soul, is liberated from ignorance. Okay, that's good. Lord Shiva also offers that facility. People generally practice religion for economic development, to get some money. For getting money, they can satisfy their senses. But when they are frustrated, they want spiritual Brahmananda, or merging into the Supreme. These four principles of material life, religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation, exist. And Lord Shiva is the friend of both the ordinary man and the man who is elevated in spiritual knowledge. Thus, it is not good for Daksha to create enmity towards him. Even Vaishnavas, who are above both the ordinary and the elevated men in this world, also worship Lord Shiva as the greatest Vaishnava. Yeah. Thus, he is the friend of everyone, the common men, the elevated men, and the devotees of the Lord. So no one should disrespect or create enmity towards Lord Shiva. Oh, now that's very good to hear it today on Shiva Ratri. So that we don't misunderstand the glories of Lord Shiva. Got to be careful. If you insult Lord Shiva, that's real serious aparada. Okay, text 16. This is Sati speaking, right? Do you think that greater or more respectable personalities than you, such as Lord Brahma, do not know this inauspicious person who goes under the name of Lord Shiva? He associates with the demons in the crematorium. His locks of hair are scattered all over his body. He is garlanded with human skulls and smeared with ashes from the crematorium. But in spite of all these inauspicious qualities, Great personalities like Brahma honor him by accepting the flowers offered to his lotus feet and placing them with great respect on their heads. See, now these are the anomalies of Lord Shiva. He puts the ashes of dead people on his body, smears it all over his body. He has very, very long hair, and they're scattered all over his body. And he is garlanded with the skulls of dead people and smeared with the ashes from the crematorium. Now, all that looks like it's very negative. But in spite of all these inauspicious qualities, great personalities like Brahma honor him by accepting the flowers offered to his lotus feet and placing them with great respect on their heads. It's good that we're hearing this today. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. It is useless to condemn a great personality like Lord Shiva. And this is being stated by his wife, Sati, to establish the supremacy of her husband. First, she said, you call Lord Shiva inauspicious because he associates with the demons and crematoriums, covers his body with the ashes of the dead, and garlands himself with the skulls of human beings. Yes, even today, you'll see people that do this. Right? You go on the internet and you'll see people that, have a garland of dead people's heads. They put the ashes of dead people on their body. They're the followers of Shiva. They have really long hair and so forth. Disheveled hair. You have shown so many defects, but you do not know that his position is always transcendental. Although he appears inauspicious, why do personalities like Brahma respect the dust of his lotus feet and place on their heads with great respect those very garlands which are condemned by you? Since Sati was a chaste woman and the wife of Lord Shiva, it was her duty to establish the elevated position of Lord Shiva, not only by sentiment, but by facts. Lord Shiva is not an ordinary living being. This is the conclusion of Vedic scriptures. He is neither on the level of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, nor on the level of the ordinary living entities. Okay, so he's not equal to Krishna, but he is not considered an ordinary living entity. He's somewhere in between. Brahma is in almost all cases an ordinary living entity. Yes, Brahma is a normal living entity who has attained, let's say, a very, very high level of spiritual knowledge and activity. So it says here, Brahma is in almost all cases an ordinary living entity. Sometimes, when there is no ordinary living entity available, the post of Brahma is occupied by an expansion of Lord Vishnu. Okay, yeah, that's a rare thing, but it happens. When there's no, let's say, ordinary living entity available who has exceptional qualities to take the position of Brahma, then Krishna will take that position. But generally, this post is occupied by a greatly pious living entity within this universe. Thus, Lord Shiva's position is constitutionally higher than that of Lord Brahma. Although Lord Shiva appeared as the son of Brahma, it is mentioned that even personalities like Brahma accept the so-called inauspicious flowers and the dust of the lotus feet of Lord Shiva. Now, this is all important information because today is Shiva. Yes, Shiva's appearance day or his celebration. So we should not have any negative thoughts about him. Great sages like Maharaji, Atri, Brigu, and others, among the 9 great sages who are descendants of Brahma, also respect Lord Shiva in such a way because they all know that Lord Shiva is not an ordinary living entity. Now, we have to be careful about something because on this day, some of the so-called Shiva devotees will smoke ganja and engage in all kinds of unclean behavior. So Shiva has like 3 types of devotees. He has demons. He's got sense gratifiers, and he also has devotees who are, uh, actually, in a mode of goodness. Why? Because he's very, very merciful. In many Puranas, it is sometimes asserted that a demigod is elevated to such a high position that he is almost on an equal level with the Supreme Personality of God. But the conclusion that Lord Vishnu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead is confirmed in every scripture. Lord Shiva is described in the Brahma Samhita to be like curd or yogurt. Curd is not different from milk, since milk is transformed into curd. In one sense, curd is also milk. Similarly, Lord Shiva is, in one sense, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but in another sense, he is not. Just as curd is milk, although we have to distinguish between the two. Yeah, so once you transform milk into curd, you can't go backwards and go back to milk. So there is a difference, although they're both fundamentally the same thing. Right? These descriptions are in the Vedic literature. Whenever we find that a demigod occupies a position apparently more elevated than that of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it is just to draw the devotee's attention to that particular demigod. It doesn't mean that that demigod is actually superior to the Lord. It is also stated in the Bhagavad Gita 9:25 that if one wants to worship a particular demigod, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is sitting in everyone's heart, gives one greater and greater attachment for that demigod so that one may be elevated to the demigod's abode. Oh, that's the mercy of Krishna. Yanti Deva Rata Devan. By worshiping demigods, one can elevate himself to the abodes of the demigods. Unfortunately, those abodes are not eternal. So, although one may feel very exalted, but they'll have to come back to the material world. Similarly, by worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can be elevated to the spiritual kingdom. This is stated in different places in Vedic literature. Here, Lord Shiva is praised by Sati, partially due to her personal respect for Lord Shiva. Since he is her husband, and partially due to his exalted position, which exceeds that of ordinary living entities, even Lord Brahma. Yeah, so Lord Shiva, although he is born from Lord Brahma, still he's superior to Lord Brahma. The position of Lord Shiva is accepted by Lord Brahma. So Daksha, Sati's father, should also recognize it. That was the point of Sati's statement. She did not actually come to her father's house to participate in the function, although before coming, she pleaded with her husband that she wanted to see her sisters and her mother. That was the plea only, for actually at heart, she maintained the idea that she would convince her father, Daksha, that it was useless to continue being envious of Lord Shiva. And now you see, sometimes it's difficult to understand the real purpose of a person. So here, ostensibly, it looks like she wants to go and see her relatives and her girlfriends and so forth. But actually, she wanted to convince her father, Daksha, not to be envious of Lord Shiva, which is a very noble thing. That was her main purpose. When she was unable to convince her father, she gave up the body she had given her, he had given her, as will be seen in the following verses. Okay, so, but we're going to see that Daksha made a big, big mistake in not respecting Lord Shiva. And what will happen is that Lord Shiva is going to cut his head off and put the head of a donkey. A donkey, I think. Anyway, we'll get to that in a few verses, I'm sure. Sati continued, if one hears an irresponsible person blaspheme the master and controller of religion, one should block his ears and go away if unable to punish him. But if one is able to kill, then one should, by force, cut out the blasphemer's tongue and kill the offender. And after that, one should give up his own life. Yeah, so if anybody insults Krishna, well, you have a couple choices what to do. One is that you cut the tongue out of the person that blasphemes Krishna and you commit suicide. Another is that you block your ears and you walk away from that person. So which one do you think you should do? You have a choice. It's better just to walk away. Don't associate with that person again. The arguments offered by Sati is that a person who vilifies a great personality is the lowest of all creatures. But by the same argument, Daksha could also defend himself by saying that since he was a Prajapati, the master of many living creatures, and one of the great officers of the great universal affairs, his position was so exalted that Sati should accept his good qualities instead of vilifying him. Very good argument. I like the way Prabhupada, gives both sides of a issue. The answer to that argument is that Sati was not vilifying, but defending. Wow, that's a big statement. If possible, she should have cut out Daksha's tongue because he blasphemed Lord Shiva. In other words, since Lord Shiva is the protector of religion. A person who vilifies him should be killed at once. Wow. And after killing such a person, one should give up one's life. That is the process. But because Daksha happened to be the father of Sati, she decided not to kill him, but to give up her own life in order to compensate for the great sin she had committed by hearing blasphemy of Lord Shiva. Now, that's a very profound statement because all of us should feel very, very, let's say, hurt when we hear blasphemy of a Vaishnava. And we should immediately, uh, either cut out the tongue of that person who blasphemes, let's say Krishna, or we should commit suicide, or we should go away and avoid any association with that person. Well, we got different possibilities. Best thing is to go away and not associate anymore with such people. Okay, so now it's going to say this. The instruction set forth here in Srimad Bhagavatam is that one should not tolerate at any cost the activities of a person who vilifies or blasphemes an authority. Okay, that's the main point. If one is a Brahmana, he should not give up his body, because by doing so, he would be responsible for killing a Brahmana. Yeah. So if you're a Brahmana, then if you hear blasphemy of Lord Shiva or Krishna, you shouldn't kill yourself because you're a Brahmana. Therefore, a Brahmana should leave the place or block his ears so that he will not hear the blasphemy. Okay. Now we know you don't have to commit suicide. If one happens to be a Kshatriya, he has the power to punish any man. Therefore, Kshatriya should at once cut out the tongue of the vilifier and kill him. Whoa. We don't have any Kshatriyas in our congregation, so it's better just to go away. But as far as the Vaishyas and Sudras are concerned, they should immediately give up their bodies. Sati decided to give up her body because she thought herself to be among the Sudras and Vaishyas. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 9:32, Striyo Vaishyas Tata Sudra, women, laborers, and the mercantile class are on the same level. Thus, since it is recommended that Vaishyas and Sudras should immediately give up their bodies upon hearing blasphemy of an exalted person like Lord Shiva, she decided to give up her life. But we're going to see that she's not an ordinary person. So Sati says, therefore, I shall no longer bear this unworthy body, which has been received from you, meaning Daksha. You have blasphemed Lord Shiva. If someone has taken food which is poisonous, the best treatment is to vomit. Wow, what a statement. Since Sati was the representation of the external potency of the Lord, it was in her power to vanquish many universes, including many Dakshas, meaning she's more powerful than Daksha. But in order to save her husband, Shiva from the charge that he employed his wife Sati to kill Daksha because he could not do so, because he could not do so due to his inferior position. She decided to give up her body. Text 19. It is better to execute one's own occupational duty than to criticize others. Elevated transcendentalists may sometimes forego the rules and regulations of the Vedas, since they do not need to follow them, just as demigods travel in space, whereas ordinary men travel on the surface of the earth. Purport: the behavior of most elevated transcendentalists and that of most fallen conditioned souls appear to be the same. The elevated transcendentalists can surpass all the regulations of the Vedas, just as the demigods traveling in space surpass all the jungles and rocks on the surface of the globe. Although a common man who has no such ability to travel in space has to face all those impediments. That's a nice statement. Although the most dear Lord Shiva appears not to observe all the rules and regulations of the Vedas, he is not affected by such disobedience. But a common man who wants to imitate Lord Shiva is mistaken. Well, we're going to see a lot of those common men who are mistaken today. They'll smoke ganja and all, talk about Shiva and smoke ganja, especially in India. What have you seen Shiva Ratri?
Yes, ma'am.
What do? They stay up all night and gamble, right?
Yes. There are different type of people, Maharaj. Like some people go on the lower side, like negative side totally.
Yeah,
Like they do all unauspicious activities.
right.
But some who are like Lord Shiva.
Yeah, he has
followers.
he has different types of devotees.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we used to do that, Maharaj, like whole night wake, stay awake, and every hour or something, we were worshipping Lord Shiva
Okay,
after certain hours, like whole night,
right.
and like worshipping that the shivling, putting water, some
Right.
leaf.
There was no ganja.
No, no, no. Like for what we were following. But there are people they do.
Yeah, they
Ganja,
smoke ganja,
they do all
kinds of sinful things.
Yeah. But that's very unfortunate. Yeah.
So, what will they do in India tonight?
Like the pious people, or
No, the nonsense people.
they do like gambling or take
Yeah, gambling.
intoxication,
Yeah,
different type of
yeah,
intoxications. Yeah.
yeah. India. Okay. So, although the most dear Lord Shiva appears not to observe all the rules and regulations of the Vedas, he is not affected by such disobedience. But a common man who wants to imitate Lord Shiva is mistaken. Yeah, he can say, well, Lord Shiva smokes ganja, so I can also smoke ganja. No. A common man must observe all the rules and regulations of the Vedas, which a person who is in a transcendental position does not need to observe. Daksha found fault with Lord Shiva for not observing all the strict rules and regulations of the Vedas. But Sati asserted that he had no need to observe such rules. It is said that for one who is powerful, like the sun or the fire, there is no consideration of purity or impurity. The sunshine can sterilize an impure place, whereas if someone else were to pass such a place, he would be affected. One should not try to imitate Lord Shiva. Rather, one should strictly follow one's prescribed occupational duties. Okay, well, that's a warning to us. One should never vilify a great personality like Lord Shiva. In the Vedas, so text 20, in the Vedas, there are directions for two kinds of activities. Activities for those who are attached to material enjoyment and activities for those who are materially detached. In consideration of these two kinds of activities, there are two kinds of people who have different symptoms. If one wants to see two kinds of activities in one person, that is contradictory. But both kinds of activities may be neglected by a person who is transcendentally situated. I like this verse. A very good verse. Okay, now let's read the purport carefully. The Vedic activities are so designed that the conditioned soul who has come to enjoy the material world, may do so under direction, so that at the end he becomes detached from such material enjoyment and is eligible to enter into the transcendental position. I like that. I like this sentence. The four different social orders, brahmacharya, grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyasa, gradually train a person to come to the platform of transcendental life. The activities and dress of a grihastha or householder are different from those of a sannyasi. One in the renounced order of life, it is impossible for one person to adopt both orders. A sannyasi cannot act like a householder, nor can a householder act like a sannyasi. But above these two kinds of persons, one who engages in material activities and one who has renounced material activities, there is the person who is transcendental to both. Nice statement. But Lord Shiva is in the transcendental position because he is stated before, because as stated before, he is always absorbed in the thought of Lord Vasudeva, meaning Krishna, within himself. Therefore, neither the activities of the Grihastha nor those of the sannyasi in the renounced order can be applicable for him. He is in the Paramahansa stage, the highest perfectional stage of life. He meaning Shiva. The transcendental position of Lord Shiva is also explained in Bhagavad Gita 2:52 and 53. It is stated there that when one fully engages in the transcendental service of the Lord by performing activities without fruitive results, very important, one is elevated to the transcendental position. At that time, he has no obligation to follow the Vedic injunctions or the different rules and regulations of the Vedas. When one is above the direction of the Vedic ritualistic injunctions for attaining different allurements and is fully absorbed in transcendental thought, which means thought of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in devotional service, one is in the position called Buddhi Yoga or Samadhi ecstasy. For a person who has attained this stage, neither the Vedic activities for realizing material enjoyment nor those for renunciation are applicable. Okay, very big statements here. All right, we'll stop right there. So this is our takeaway from today. It says, it is stated here that when one fully engages in transcendental service of the Lord by performing activities without fruitive results, one is elevated to the transcendental position. At that time, he has no obligation to follow the Vedic injunctions or the different rules and regulations of the Vedas. When one is above the directions of the Vedic ritualistic injunctions for attaining different allurements and is fully absorbed in transcendental thought, which means thought of the Supreme Personality Godhead in devotional service, one is in a position called Buddhi Yoga or Samadhi ecstasy. For a person who has attained this stage, neither the Vedic activities for realizing material enjoyment nor those for renunciation are applicable. Okay, that's our takeaway for today. Very big statement. All right, we'll stop right there. Are there any questions? Okay, so what is the position of a Vaishnava? Vaishnava is transcendental to mundane activities and desires, and is in the highest perfectional stage of life. So, and this is explained in the Bhagavad Gita, second chapter, 52nd and 53rd verse. It is stated there that when one fully engages in the transcendental service of the Lord by performing activities without fruitive results, one is elevated to the transcendental position. At that time, he has no obligation to follow the Vedic injunctions or the different rules and regulations of the Vedas. So, for example, when a relative dies and you go and see a pundit, he'll tell you to do so many things, like, for example, not to chant Hare Krishna or do any type of spiritual activity for 1 month, for example. You remember?
It's for at least for first 13 days. Big no.
Right. And what did I tell you?
To chant Hare Krishna.
Just chant Hare Krishna. Don't ignore that instruction that you got from the pundit. He told you not to chant Hare Krishna, not to do any puja. So there's a practical experiences. I didn't tell you, you have to follow this, is very important. No. It may be important for non-devotees, but not for a devotee. The devotee never stops chanting Hare Krishna, although the pundit told you, don't do anything. Don't chant, don't do anything.
No worship at all.
No worship at all, yeah. Because you're theoretically contaminated because somebody in your family died. What did I tell you?
Continue to chant.
Just chant Hare Krishna. Yeah. The Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is not an ordinary thing. It's not a mundane thing. It's transcendental. But if you're not a devotee, then you might have to follow all those rules, because they're meant for purification.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yes.
Dandavat Pranam Maharaj. Maharaj, I have a question about so there is in the scripture now, today we learned, right? We should not compare Shiva and Krishna or Vishnu. As per Vaishnavism, yes, Krishna is the ultimate personality. And but the problem is there are so many people have different opinions, and they basically, like for example, Shaivites and Vaishnavism. There is always a fight from, like, since ancient there used to be king for Shaivite, they used to fight with the Vaishnavism, and there is always a quarrel or fighting. So who is related to the supremacy, right? So if,
Yes.
and we made so many people like who are basically follows Shiva or Shivaism and all, and sometimes, and there are sometimes they are our close ones, friends. So at that time, how do we avoid or refrain from? Basically, we should not compare. But it comes sometimes that okay, we started talking, and they say that okay, it comes into the, we might fall into arguments. So how do we avoid, or what should we do in that case? Because as per the offenses, also the first offense itself we follow in ISKCON, right? That we should not. It's like we
Not
call
worship the
Shiva as,
demigods.
yeah, worship the demigod like Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma to be equal to and independent of Lord Vishnu. So there itself, the first itself, um, it's the first offense actually. When we say in the morning Mangalarti.
Yeah.
And so when we end up like comparing, sometimes when we start explaining, it's not like to show, but this is what it is, what we believe, that Krishna is the supreme. But people get offended, people get especially when we call demigod to Shiva, then how come it's the demigod? So there's so many. So how do we just ignore them, or we should not explain them, or how do you handle these situations when we are talking to somebody who is Shivites or who believes in Shiva? A lot of people in nonsense India, actually, they always think that okay, everybody is same. Uh,
Right. Yes. Okay. So just 1 second. 1 second.
yeah.
Okay. So the main takeaway today, which is also the answer to your question, is it is stated here there. Now we're talking about text 20 and the last statements. It says the transcendental position of Lord Shiva is also explained in Bhagavad Gita 2.52 and 53. It is stated there that when one fully engages in the transcendental service of the Lord by performing activities without fruitive results, one is elevated to the transcendental position. At that time, he has no obligation to follow the Vedic injunctions or the different rules and regulations of the Vedas. When one is above the directions of the Vedic ritualistic injunctions for attaining different allurements and is fully absorbed in transcendental thought, which means thought of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in devotional service, one is in the position called Buddhi Yoga or Samadhi ecstasy. For a person who has attained this stage, neither the Vedic activities for realizing material enjoyment nor those for renunciation are applicable. So, if we are genuinely following the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness and do not commit any aparads, like insulting people or whatever, and completely giving up sense gratification, and always chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, then we are fully engaged in transcendental service of the Lord by performing activities without fruitive results. Yeah, we're simply glorifying Krishna. We don't say, well, if I chant this, then I'll get that. No, one does not expect any quid pro quo. Looked at it. Quid pro quo. In other words, we don't accept anything in return for the service that we do. We're satisfied by the service itself. We don't ask for anything because we do some service. And there's a statement, quid pro quo.
It's quid, Q-U-I-D, Maharaj.
Yeah.
Quid Q pro.
Pro quo.
Quid pro quo.
Yeah.
It is. It's a Latin phrase.
Yeah.
That means something for something,
Yes.
or this for that.
Yes. Yeah, go ahead.
It's used to describe an exchange of goods, services, favors, or money.
Right. So in other words, if someone chants, let's say, let's say they chant 60 rounds a day. So, but the minimum is 16 rounds. So they think that because they chanted extra rounds, they should be given special things in return, right? Like they should get rich, or they should get a beautiful wife, or they should have a new car, or whatever. That's called quid pro quo. In other words, you do something and you want to get something in return for doing it. So that's not pure devotional service. That's selfishness. And that's why it says here, it says, it is stated there, meaning in Bhagavad Gita 2:52 and 53, that when one fully engages in the transcendental service of the Lord by performing activities without fruitive results, in other words, not asking anything in return, right? One is elevated to the transcendental position. At that time, he has no obligation to follow the Vedic injunctions or the different rules and regulations of the Vedas. When one is above the direction of the Vedic ritualistic injunctions for attaining different allurements, meaning different material benefits, and is fully absorbed in transcendental thought, which means thought of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in devotional service, one is on a position called Buddhi Yoga or Samadhi, ecstasy. For a person who has attained this stage, neither the Vedic activities for realizing material enjoyment nor those for renunciation are applicable. So you don't have to perform all the Vedic activities for getting material enjoyment or for renunciation, because you're engaged in pure activity of Krishna consciousness. Yeah, I mean, you have to be active, but you're active in Krishna consciousness. You're not active in performing yagas for material benefits. Or you're not engaged in severe renunciation. Yeah, sometimes, some people will start fasting, but the purpose is something material, right? And even devotees sometimes do it, but actually that's a mistake. We should only do things that are for the benefit of Krishna. It's not that, okay, well, let's fast for so and so who's sick. That's not really going to help the person who's sick. But if you chant Hare Krishna without asking for anything, but simply for glorifying Krishna, then Krishna knows what's in your heart. You don't have to ask him for anything. And if you sincerely chant, then maybe Krishna will help that sick person get better. But better or worse, one does not give up chanting Hare Krishna. It's not that, oh, well, I chanted and my friend died, so I'm not going to chant anymore. That's the wrong attitude. In other words, if someone is chanting like that, that's for a material desire. So someone will say, well, I chanted all night long Hare Krishna, and still my father died. Now I'm not going to chant anymore. So that would be a mistake. But the correct thing would be, okay, my father died, but I'm not going to stop chanting because I know that the soul is eternal. Now I'm going to chant, continue chanting for the, the welfare of all living entities, including my father, but not for any material purpose, just for helping everyone become Krishna conscious. If I say, "Oh, I'm only going to chant for my father. I don't care about anybody else," well, that's a material desire. Actually, whenever we're chanting out loud, it's for the benefit of all people. It's not just for one person or one group of people. Okay, well, thank you very much. We'll stop right there and continue tomorrow. A lot of takeaways, but today, the main takeaway is that,
Excellent.
yeah, go ahead. You have a question?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Yes, I have one question here. Let's see. Under the 4 Sampradayas, I see that there are followers of Shiva, Lord Brahman, the Kumaras, and Lakshmi. And my question is, are they all, except for the followers of Lord Brahman, are they all Mayavadis?
They're all devotees.
Except for the followers of Lord Shiva are Mayavadis?
No, some of the followers of Lord Shiva are actually devotees.
Okay.
He has different followers. He has demons, and he's got, materialistic people, and he's also got pure devotees. The Shiva Tattva, the knowledge of Shiva is a little bit complicated. But because, there are demons that are worshiping Shiva also, but for material benefits. But Shiva is very kind, so he gives it to them and tries to help them get weaned off of their, materialistic desires. So we should never criticize Lord Shiva because he's actually a pure devotee. But on the other hand, we should not be angry that Shiva sometimes will associate with very low-class people. It's only because he's very, very merciful. But we shouldn't try to emulate Shiva or try and do the same things that Shiva does, because he has transcendental powers that we don't have. So we can just sit back and appreciate Lord Shiva's transcendental, powers, but not try to emulate them or follow them.
I see that they have different beads. They don't chant on Telsies. Are they chanting a different mantra?
Well, you see, Shiva has different types of followers. Some are demons, some are materialists, and some are devotees. So we should just stick to Krishna consciousness and don't try to imitate any of those other followers of Shiva. But we should have all respect for Lord Shiva, because he is the greatest servant of Lord Krishna. But we can't equal Lord Shiva. We can't imitate Lord Shiva's activities, because he's much more powerful than any of us. So he might be able to do things that seem to be forbidden for regular devotees. Well, we should not be envious of that, nor should we try and imitate that. The followers of Shiva try to imitate sometimes his activities, and we shouldn't fall into that trap. We should just stick to, Krishna consciousness. But we can hear about the activities of Shiva because he is a pure devotee. But we should never think that we can imitate what Shiva does. Right? Like, for example, Shiva drank an ocean of poison. So obviously he can do things that we can't do. If we even took one drop of that poison, we would die. So that means we do not have any capability of imitating Lord Shiva. That's the mistake that some people make. They think, well, Shiva drank the hala hala poison, so I can smoke marijuana. No. But I've been in places where there have been ceremonies in which not devotees, but Shiva devotees, they smoke marijuana and other things. They first of all have the marijuana blessed by a sadhu, and then they all smoke marijuana, but it's been blessed by the sadhu. And they think that, Lord Shiva is going to give them a blessing. Anyway, we should stay far away from people like that.
So
There are a lot of people like that. Yeah, go ahead.
So they don't chant Hare Krishna on their beads?
Well, they have their own mantras. They might sometimes chant Hare Krishna, but they have their own mantras. And you'll hear them today. If you go to India, you'll hear all those other mantras that they chant. Hala hala something. They're chanting all these different mantras to glorify Shiva. Anyway, we shouldn't criticize them, but we shouldn't try to follow them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it okay to associate with them? Because we're supposed to associate with only devotees, but is it okay to associate with them at the other temples?
It's best not to do that.
Okay.
It's best only to associate with genuine devotees. They're also devotees, the ones that follow Lord Shiva, but Shiva has different levels of devotees. Some of his devotees are demons. Some of them are just sense gratifiers, and some of them are pure. So we shouldn't get mixed up in that. Most of the followers of Lord Shiva will not be pure devotees. So it's best not to associate with them. But we should never criticize Lord Shiva because he has powers that we don't have. For example, he does drink poison to save the universe from being completely corrupted. We can't do that. So because he did drink an ocean of poison, many of his followers smoke ganja or marijuana. And they say different mantras of Shiva when they do that. All that is nonsense. We should not go near those people. Even in India, you can go to Vrindavan and you'll see people on the bank of the Yamuna River or the Ganges River smoking marijuana, and they're sadhus, but they're followers of Shiva. So we shouldn't get confused by that. Genuine Vaishnava will never do anything like that. But the followers of Shiva do sometimes. Shiva has different types of followers. He has some followers who are demons. We have some followers who are, high-level sense gratifiers. And he has some followers that are genuine devotees. But we should not be attracted by that. We should be strictly following Srila Prabhupada. So Prabhupada never smoked ganja and never engaged in unclean activities. So that's who we should follow. But on the other hand, we should never criticize Lord Shiva.
Thank you,
Hare Krishna.
Krishna.
Should we end the class, Maharaj?
Huh?
Should we end the class?
Yeah. Well, today we're going to celebrate Shivaratri, but we're not going to smoke marijuana and do other things that other people do who celebrate Shivaratri.